Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel. I declare the meeting open at 1:05 p.m. and welcome everyone in attendance. I acknowledge we're hosting this meeting in the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal people as traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters, and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the DAP Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the DAP Regulations. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. I'd like to introduce the members of the panel that we have with us today. My name is Dale Page. I'm the presiding member today. With me in the room, I have Francesca Lafonte, who is the deputy presiding member, and Luigi D'Alessandro, who is the specialist member. We also have with us Councillor Jennifer Catalano, our local government DAP member from the City of Swan, and Councillor Rod Henderson, also local government DAP member from the City of Swan. Welcome to you both. Item 2, apologies. We have nil for this meeting. Members on leave of absence, nil. Item 4, noting of minutes. We note the minutes of all previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving then to part B of the agenda for the City of Swan. Item 1, declarations of due consideration. Panel members all need to have considered the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and the related information that was uploaded to the DAP website. Could I please confirm by a show of hands that this is so? Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. No declarations of interest have been received to this point. Do members have any interests they'd like to declare? No. Local government members, could I just check with you whether this item has been before you at a council meeting or briefing?
I don't believe it did, but City Swan officers may have other opinions, but I don't believe it has. Okay.
Thank you for that. Moving then on to item 3. Form 1 DAP application 3.1, lot 100, number 5, Muriel Street, Middle Swan. Proposed additions to an existing educational establishment, specifically a boarding house, DAP number 24/02779. We have one presenter on this item today, Jordan Busher from Resolve Group, who is speaking in support of the recommendation in the report. Jordan, I remind you, in accordance with our standing orders, presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We've read all the material in the report, so you're encouraged to focus on the main aspects you want to present within the 3 minutes you have. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Just confirming that everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the Development Assessment Panel. My name is Jordan Busher, representing the applicant Resolve Group on behalf of our client Munsly Moore Architects. Thanks for the opportunity to present the proposal for a new boarding house at LaSalle College. We'd firstly really like to express our sincere thank yous to the City of Swan, in particular Natasha and early on Selena, for the favourable recommendation in the City's Responsible Authority report. The support's greatly appreciated and reflects a collaborative approach we've taken throughout the planning process and engaging the City very early on. Before I briefly touch on the design, I just will quickly touch on the planning context. In terms of the subject site, it's zoned private clubs and institutions under the LPS. The zoning is specifically intended to facilitate the development of facilities associated with the private institutions, including educational establishments like LaSalle College. This proposed boarding house directly aligns with the zone objectives in a number of key ways. Firstly, supporting educational facilities. The boarding house directly supports the college's primary function by providing on-site accommodation for students from remote areas. enhancing the school's operational capacity and serving students with specific needs, whilst also relocating said facility to be on site to better integrate said students with the college and surroundings. It's incidental and an ancillary use. The boarding house is an integral part of the existing educational establishment serving LaSalle College students. Not a standalone facility, but a complementary development consistent with the zoning's allowance for ancillary uses. The maintenance of amenity and character. Munslow Moore architects have done a really good job in meeting their client's brief, in that the design seamlessly integrates with the existing school facilities, respecting the context, amenity, scale, and character of the surrounding area, and incorporating that into such a unique shaped site. This has obviously been achieved through close collaboration with the project team and its stakeholders, and valuable input from the design review panel process. In terms of parking and setbacks, the proposal complies with the city's LPP 127 and 129 relating to parking and building setbacks, while recognising the really unique nature of the shape of the lot and the type of this development and its context with the college. We've ensured that sufficient parking, which exceeds the demand actually, particularly given the favourable reciprocal parking arrangements and the site's operation outside of peak school hours.
You're reaching 3 minutes, Jordan, so if you could bring it to a close.
We'll wrap things up then. I'll very quickly, key design features, the human scale and visual interest, a emphasis on indoor-outdoor connection, passive design, durability and sustainability, a huge emphasis on cultural sensitivity with extensive engagement with the Kimberley elders from Balgo. It's accessible and safe, and we've carefully considered noise, traffic, overshadowing, and bushfire. And to wrap things up, the proposal represents a significant investment in the future of students in the area, particularly Indigenous students coming from remote communities, providing them with a supportive environment to thrive academically and personally. It aligns with the City of Swan's planning objectives and state planning policies, and we're confident that the development will be a valuable asset to the college and the wider community. We respectfully request the Development Assessment Panel's vote in favour of the City's recommendation, and thank you for your time today. And open to any questions. We've also got Stuart Preston online, who led the project from an architectural point of view, if there's any specific architectural queries. But thanks very much.
Thank you, Jordan. Are there any questions of this presenter? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Jordan. I'm just curious, has the old building been demolished yet?
Yes, that's been demolished.
Okay. Now, what about a Section 18 under the Aboriginal Heritage Act? Do you know about whether you have to get one of those or not?
Don't believe so. I mean, that would have probably occurred throughout the engagement process between the city and the Aboriginal Heritage Department within the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and they provided no comment as such.
But the proponent has to make that application, not the city.
Yeah, you probably would have to double check that one with the city's officers themselves. I'm unfamiliar with that process.
No, I don't believe the city has anything to do with it. I think that's proponent has to do that. And I do know that the Blackadder Creek is actually a registered site.
We can check in with the city's officers when we get to that point, Councillor.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, are there going to be any trees removed from the site for the building of the, and how many?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Catalano, for the query. Look, it's something we've put a huge emphasis on, is trees and landscaping, particularly the cultural sensitivities around landscaping for this particular site, and it's people living there. And in terms of existing trees on site, there's 38, so I can give you some specific numbers actually if you like.
Just the numbers that you're going to remove, thanks, and the species.
So there's a net gain of 18 trees. So there's been 9 being removed and 27.
Okay, so could you just tell us the species of the 9 species that are going to be removed?
Look, I don't have them on hand. I've got the species that are proposed, which would be replacing, and they'll all be
No, that's fine,
native.
thanks. No, thank you. I'm more interested in the removal of mature trees, not necessarily the planting of new trees, because it takes 30 to 50 years for a tree to develop to mature size. So
That's right, yeah.
9 trees are going to be removed, right? Okay. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Just
I got a
wanted
bit
to,
of delay, I think.
yeah, you don't know what they are. Okay. So I wanted to also ask you about I think it was the DFES report or the report about the fire risk. Did you have a response to that?
Yeah, so have you gone through the amended bushfire management plan that was provided to the city?
Or can you just give me a bit of a heads up about it? What are you planning to do?
So it's quite an extensive report. We've the bushfire consultants on the project team have replied to each of those queries raised by DFES, and they've all been satisfied through the amended bushfire management plan.
So do you know the basics of that management plan?
Which specific question were you relating to from DFES?
Oh, I just thought that they basically thought that it was, just in a bushfire prone, it's going to be built in a bushfire prone area. And my reading of the report was that they didn't really support it.
Yeah, no, not quite.
Maybe you can explain it to me a bit better then.
The site shape, the proposed building shape is actually dictated to by the setbacks that have come out of the bushfire management plan to ensure a safe development. So there is a BAL rating that is relevant to the building, Councillor Catalano. So that's BAL 29. So there's some stringent building requirements as part of that,
right,
which will be able to be met successfully. In terms of the nature of the queries from DFES, perhaps if you could be a little bit specific, I'll be happy to answer them. So the main query was probably one of the main queries was the categorisation of some of the areas that are identified on the contour map. We've since had that amended and reflected. So there's no outstanding queries there that should be of any concern. I wouldn't have thought.
Okay, then. All right. Okay. All right. So will you be removing any trees because of the bushfire risk?
Yeah. So just so we're completely clear, there's 9 trees being removed as part of the proposal to make sure it's a safe and developable site and reduces any bushfire risk. But as a result of that, we're adding. And what you rightfully mentioned before is the critical time period it takes for a tree to flourish, and that's why we will be adding advanced trees, and that there'll be actually a net gain of 18 trees. So fantastic result in terms of the tree canopy itself. So what's probably really important to note is the tree canopy. In this instance, there's 2,500 square meters of canopy coverage. After our development, there's going to be 3,510. So we're talking about the benefits that providing advanced trees can result in. Then we've actually got a net gain of 938 square meters of tree canopy coverage, which would be a great result for the area.
But it seems a little bit contradictory what you're saying, because you're removing 9 trees because of the bushfire risk, but then you're going to increase the canopy. So how is that going to be managed in the future if the canopy is going to be increased? The bushfire risk I'm talking about.
Jordan, can I ask a question just to clarify what Councillor Catalano is asking? Are you removing those 9 trees out of the asset protection zone and the new trees are being planted not in the asset protection zone?
So the landscaping plan is still to be finalised, but that is the intention, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Catalano?
Thanks, Councillor Catalano.
No, thank you.
Councillor Henderson, any questions for the applicant? No. Any other panel members? Do you have questions of the applicant?
No.
I have one, if you don't mind. So there have been some concerns raised about potential antisocial behaviour off premises, and it appears the operational management plan referenced in condition 25.6 to address this. What sort of unsupervised freedom of movement would students have outside of school premises or school hours? And what measures do you think you would need to include in an operational management plan to address this?
It's a good question. One that I'm not 100% sure on those specifics. I'm not sure if Stuart, if you had anything to add onto the operational management plan that the school is looking to implement.
Yeah, I can add some to that, Jordan. Again, it's not something that has been finalised with the school. Certainly, the borders are over at Swan, which is just around the corner from this site at the moment. They do have movement. They can go to the shops and the like. So they'll be able to use bicycles that are on the school for their leisure. But they'll certainly be in control. The space is designed that there is a central entry point and an exit there. So no doubt there'll be sign in and sign out measures. We've got security access control around the entries and exits of the building, so that can be controlled and maintained with CCTV camera in operation as well. So, in terms of a management and supervision, there's permanent house parents who live on site. One is on each of the floors, as we've got the boys and girls separated between levels, so there's adequate supervision during those times as well.
Thank you. Just to follow up, and you may or may not be able or willing to answer this. So in your view, young people outside of school premises, whether they're boarders or not, there should be no difference whether they live in the boarding house or not in terms of movement or any young person's behaviour in the community. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's the school is gated. There's a gate that is controlled at the front to the school as well. So there's a secure point from there. But they're able to have Uber Eats delivered if they like, and those sorts of things. But for all intent and purpose, it is no different.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. If there are no further questions of the applicant, we might move to questions of the local government officers. We have with us today Natasha German, Jonathan Lendich and Phil Russell from the City of Swan for this item. Are there any questions that members would like to ask the city officers? Councillor Catalano, do you have questions for the city's officers?
Well, I don't need to ask them about the Aboriginal Heritage Act because city officers have said before that that's something that the proponent has to do. So I won't ask it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, any question of the officers?
No, nothing from me, Madam Chair.
Any other DAP members have questions? I have a couple, if you don't mind. In relation to condition 7, is this not covered by separate legislation? And is it usually recommended as a condition of approval?
Through you, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman. Condition 7 is in relation to contractors being made aware of the potential for archaeological material to be uncovered during excavation works. Now, we impose in Guildford, and this isn't in Guildford, of course, in Guildford, the heritage policy requires a watching brief for archaeological material. It would appear that this would probably pertain to anything in relation to Indigenous Aboriginal heritage on the site. You're quite correct that the obligation, as Councillor Catalano has noted, the obligations on a proponent to adhere to the requirements of the Aboriginal Heritage Act do exist under separate legislation. So you could form the view that condition 7 is maybe redundant or otherwise captured by other legislation and doesn't need to be imposed.
Thank you. In relation to condition 9, and that refers to connection of the land to the developer's cost, and payment must be made prior to the issue of a building permit. Wouldn't it be more reasonable for the fee to be paid prior to commencement of development rather than prior to issue of a building permit? Is there still not the chance that the development may not proceed once the building permit's issued? Is it more appropriate prior to commencement?
Through you, Madam Chairman, you could say that. You could even say that you don't need to specify when. You might simply say if the development is enacted, then there is a liability, which is a liability, as we know, in perpetuity. 6 of one, half dozen the other. I would probably take a punt to say that at some point in time, the project team will suggest, can we do it, make the payment prior to occupation. We're not particularly worried either way, Madam Chairman, whether it's amended to say prior to occupation or prior to commencement of development through a building permit.
Thank you for that. Couple more, if you don't mind. In relation to condition 13, which refers to the statement of sustainability, and that comes out of the design review process, it states that there's a need for the statement of sustainability to be complied with for the duration of construction only. Should it be complied with in perpetuity?
The nature of, through Madam Chairman, the nature of the way that those recommendations are made by design review panels, inclusive of the city's one against the SPP, is, I would say, an encouragement to pursue sustainability initiatives. I'm not aware of any panel in the state recommending the refusal of an application because they didn't have certain sustainability measures in them. It's an expression of an intent taken, in my opinion, to a degree on faith as opposed to a statutory requirement, because as we know, it's hard to impose sustainability measures that aren't necessarily measures that are included in building legislation. It's a bit hard to overreach to say you're going to have 7 stars or 10 stars in terms of energy efficiency when other legislation might only indicate or provide guidelines through a lesser standard. So I'm comfortable enough with the way it's worded. It's more, as I said, it's more an expression of an intent to aim for measures of sustainability that ultimately get manifest in the building permit.
Thank you. Can I just seek some more clarification? Yet you've put it in as a condition to be adhered to during construction. So if you're going to condition the approval that it needs to be complied with, and I think that's the word that's used, for the duration of construction, and given your explanation now, I would think either don't have the condition and make it an advice note, or make it a requirement that it is complied with in perpetuity.
Yeah, I accept the wording there. It should be, I would suggest that the statement of sustainability is to comply with and leave it at that and delete the rest of the words.
Okay, thanks.
That's my recommendation.
Thank you for that. Is condition 24 necessary, given condition 25A deals with waste management as part of the operational management plan? Or do you think they have different intents and purposes?
I have, I would suggest that they have slightly different. You could easily, you're quite right, Madam Chairman, you could have amalgamated the 2 conditions into a wording that indicated the times for collection. The condition 25 talks about where the bin collection is, how many bins it's accommodating, how they will be operated or moved around. That talks about the placement on the site. It doesn't talk about the collection hours, which is what condition 24 does. So I would say that they're closely related, but have their own distinct separate purposes.
That's fine, thank you. Very last one from me. Advice note E relates to condition 23, and it references an erosion and sediment control plan. Is this erosion and sediment control plan a separate plan to the construction management, or is it part of the construction management plan?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, advice note, which letter?
Advice note E.
E.
Relates to condition 23. And condition 23 relates to your construction management plan, but advice note E references an erosion and sediment control plan. So is that a completely separate plan, or is that a component of the construction management plan?
I know certainly reading the advice note, and I will say this, I've never been a great fan of advice notes. I did finalise this report and I wouldn't have troubled to put the advice notes on it. I don't believe in them greatly, but you're quite correct. It clearly talks about managing the potential for erosion and sediment export to the Blackadder Creek, so it is related to the construction, quite correct.
So if we were to delete advice note E, the construction management plan will pick that up. It's not a separate plan, is it?
No. Well, Madam Chair, if you want my venue, I have famously said to past panels but haven't been able to follow through with it. I never impose advice notes on my authorised reports, and I wouldn't have done so here. I don't see great value in them, as I've said. You feel free to delete the whole raft of them if you see fit.
No, I don't think there's
just this one.
I don't think there's a need to do that. I just needed to check whether or not this was a separate plan,
okay,
because it's got a different title. As long as it
it's the same plan. It's a control plan on advice and how to manage the impacts of construction.
Thank you kindly. All right, are there any, Councillor Catalano?
Thank you. I just are you able to confirm, Ms. Russell, whether that 9 trees are going to be removed for to meet the BEL requirements, or is that something that you have never looked at, or is that?
Confirm that through you, Madam Chair. What I will say is it's the old conundrum. When you have, in particular with properties that abut the Blackadder Creek and its heavily vegetated state, at least under old fire planning regimes, proposed a bushfire threat, a mappable threat and a classifiable threat to adjoining development. So the threat principally is from the vegetation within the creek, but certainly you have the normal conundrum that if you're attempting to ensure through an asset protection zone that you clear or manage the amount of vegetation in order to mitigate against the level of bushfire attack, then you need to finally balance the nature of your landscaping with the need to ensure you comply with a bushfire attack level rating not in excess of 29. So what I would say in relation to that, despite, and we acknowledge the proponent's desire to expound a ambitious degree of revegetation, but I would say, caution the panel that that will necessarily be tempered by the requirements imposed in relation to the bushfire management plan and the several conditions pertaining to that on the approval. So I would not automatically lock in as a certainty the amount of trees to be removed and or the amount of vegetation or landscaping to be replanted. That will be, the landscaping plan will necessarily defer to the bushfire management plan.
Okay, and that we haven't received, have we?
Sorry, I haven't received what?
I just could not see in there where trees are going to be removed. It looked to me like there weren't going to be very many trees removed. So I'm a bit surprised that I hear that there's now going to be 8 or 9. I can't remember the number, but.
Well, through you, Madam Chairman, the landscaping plan will encompass, clearly identify the trees that are to be removed and the trees that are to be retained.
Oh, yeah.
The plans that I see there indicate trees to be retained and new trees. Quite correct. I do not discern that it clearly indicates the trees to be removed. I have no reason to doubt what Mr. Busher has indicated, but the final extent of trees to be removed, as I indicated, is going to be determined by the need to effect an asset protection zone and implement the other requirements of the bushfire management plan.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up, because that's the problem I was having as well. Good, thank you.
Can I just quickly make comment? The removal of trees was covered off in our plan package through the demolition plan. So you should have that with you, Councillor Catalano. But Stuart, did you want to maybe talk to this matter just so we can really close it out once and for all?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Jordan. Councillor Catalano, I'll give you the page of the agenda. It was, let me go. It's 59 of 226, if that helps. Those trees, you can then, if necessary, they're within the arborist report, which is further down on page 103 is a map of all of those trees. You can see a number of those. It's T33, T34, T9 and 18. So those then have a grading. So we're not, we've got some low to medium grade trees in there, that the ones being removed.
Thank you, Stuart. Does that answer your question, Councillor Catalano? Can't hear you, sorry. Councillor, we can't hear you, sorry.
Mute.
Sorry, I was just trying to turn the mute button off. That's all. No, that's fine. I've got the map now of your what do you call it? Your demolition map now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I can see what
the
you're
arborist. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. All right. Unless there are further questions of the city staff, are there any? No, then let us move to the responsible authority report. Can I seek a mover and a seconder for the recommendation in the responsibility authority report? Anyone wish to move the recommendation? Thank you. Anyone wish to second? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Francesca, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, I have duly considered the various matters contained in the report. Thank you to both officers as well as applicant in going through a much more detailed explanation in relation to the asset protection zone for bushfire and the associated trees. And I note the comments that have been made in relation to the ongoing obligations regarding the asset protection and what that may mean for vegetation as it grows in order to balance both the local environment along with the operation and safety and use of the boarding house. From my perspective, I am satisfied that the proposal is consistent with the planning framework, the zoning and its objectives, and I'm also satisfied that the development is appropriate in the context of the site, particularly that the land use is integral with, as specified by the applicant, integral with the functions of the school, and noting that it's the boarding house is provided in a different location and it's being moved to be located within the school boundaries. Therefore, I'm comfortable that it is both an incidental and compatible use with the existing private school land use and therefore is appropriate in its context. I'm also supportive of the minor setback variations, and I note that the aspect of the setback variation as shown on the plans and contained within the report effectively adjoin what is a non-residential or a unused structure or unused buildings, and that nonetheless they are non-residential by land use planning classification. I'm also comfortable that the proposed boarding house is, as already indicated, a compatible activity or compatible land use with schools. It is not uncommon for many schools around the state to include boarding houses for the provision of their students. And I note that this one is only catering for 40 students. It's actually quite a low number, and I'm comfortable that the amenity and safety issues are appropriately addressed through conditions, some of which are enduring and ongoing and require renew and reconsideration as part of an ongoing obligation. Overall, I'm satisfied with that development. I will, on a side note, comment that's already been raised today that I think that the schools have shown, both on this school and other schools, that appropriate controls, safety and supervision controls are in place for students, and noting that general movement within the local community would be possible, no different than any others, and I am supportive of this proposal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson, as seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes. Quite a few aspects of this have been discussed in questions, the answers of which are in the depth of the actual report, in particular the BAL issues to achieve BAL 29. I was quite impressed with the amount of effort that has been taken to site the structure to achieve the minimal impact on the existing tree alignments and trees in the area. Certainly, some of those trees are minor trees, and the impact would be mitigated by the planting of significant trees rather than small saplings. So that aspect of it impressed me. As Deputy Chair of our Bushfire Advisory Committee, I was pleased to see that a lot of work had been done to mitigate the issues around BAL. The proposal is of a standard and a quality that we would expect today, and I'm certainly impressed with that. The key things for me are that we have a place for LaSalle to be able to border their students, and the demand is clearly there. I think we should be approving this, although there were some mooted amendments to the recommendation advice. Perhaps that can be dealt with after debate or before we put the motion. But overall, I'm impressed with the application and more than pleased to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other members that would like to speak for or against? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, I'd like to speak against it, and I wasn't actually going to, but when I found out that there's 8 or 9 mature trees, which is a large number of mature trees that are going to be cleared, felled, to facilitate the building of this dormitory, boarding house, and to facilitate the bushfire risk or mitigate it. It seems to me that then this building should not be built in this location. If it's a bushfire prone area, the building should not be there. And if it means the destruction of mature trees, it should not be built there, because this negatively impacts on the Blackadder Creek, which, as I understand, is a registered site under the Aboriginal Heritage Act, and which is already under significant environmental stress. I mean, you just come down to Midland and just see what the environmental situation or the environment's like here. Midland needs to retain every one of its big canopy trees, particularly the local native trees. Yeah, there's going to be more planting, but honestly, and I have to say that as a panel member, we do not have 30 years to wait for canopy. The environment doesn't have 30 years to wait for canopy, and the creek doesn't have 30 years. Even if these, so-called other trees are even allowed to be planted, given that there is the bushfire risk, and even if those other trees do thrive. Now, I just want to make one final thing. You know, in making planning decisions, it appears that as a panel member, I am constantly having to look past, these kind of issues, particularly the environmental issues, and make individual exceptions to what I consider is harm to the natural environment, and that will result in further degradation to the natural environment. And I don't have to tell you, but I do need to say it, that we as humans share that natural environment with all these other living things, and we all rely on it, and future generations are going to rely on it. And we make this exception now, but what do we do the next time it comes up? How many trees do we have to lose in the Blackadder Creek, for instance, before we say, no, you know what, you can't build in the creek or near the creek because of the bushfire risk? I understand bushfire risk is because of trees, but unfortunately, we've got to have trees to live, to survive. And we know that. We actually know that. And that's why I'm saying it has to stop. It has to stop now with the decisions we're making now. And I make these points at a lot of these meetings because it's just the facts. So for that reason, I can't support it. And I can't support it because of the loss of those mature trees. And I'm pretty sure that if LaSalle was to have a good look at its grounds, all the opportunities that might be made possible to them in terms of other land owned by the state government that's in proximity to their school, that they might be able to find another way around it that doesn't involve the loss of this, really significant natural assets. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other member like to speak for or against? Mr.
Yes,
Alessandro?
I'd like to speak in support of the recommendation for approval. In my view, after due consideration, it's consistent with the planning framework. The design is of a high standard, and the reports and conditions appropriately cover the risks that have been outlined in the conditions. On that basis, I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. I too will support the recommendation for approval, but I would like to move a small series of amendments, if that is okay. The first amendment is the deletion of condition 7. This is covered by separate legislation and there is no need for it to be a condition of development approval. Do I have a seconder for that amendment, please? Thank you, Francesca. Is there any dissent to that amendment? All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Second amendment in relation to condition 9, I would like to seek an amendment to condition 9 that the fee needs to be paid prior to occupation, as discussed with the officers earlier, instead of prior to the issue of a building permit. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Francesca. All those in favour of that amendment? Unanimous. Thank you. In relation to condition 13, I seek to amend condition 13 by it relates to the statement of sustainability. I'd like to delete the last part of the condition, specifically the sentence that says the statement of sustainability is to be complied with for the duration of the construction of the development, because it would then apply to in perpetuity. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Francesca. Any dissent to that amendment? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then last amendment, I seek to delete advice note E. It references an erosion and sediment control plan, which is covered by the construction management plan in condition 23. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro. Is there any dissent to that? Councillor Catalano, would you like?
Yes, I would. I think that that needs to be in there, because that was something that was raised by one of the state government agencies. I can't remember if it was Department of Water or DPOR. Look, you know, it needs to be in there because the amount of lack of control that building works, the amount of damage that has done to the Blackadder Creek over the years, you know, there's no reason without that advice note. There's no real notice that they do have to do things better and build better and construct better, so that it doesn't negatively impact on the creek, because that is not the way things have been done in the past in Midland. And in fact, that's not the way things have been done in the past by LaSalle themselves. So they don't have a good track record. So that's just my personal experience of it. So I think it's a good idea just to keep it in there because it alerts. I mean, you know, it's an alert, it's a notice that actually when it comes to the creek, there has to be some respect for it, and there has to be some respect for, you know, what it provides all of us. And that's why I'd like to keep it in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I guess from my perspective, the erosion and sediment issues are already going to be covered by the construction management plan. The city will require those as a matter of course. This advice note just refers to erosion and sediment control, but it is already captured in condition 23. Hence my amendment to just delete advice note E. But if the rest of the panel wishes to retain it, that is fine. Councillor Henderson, do you wish to speak to this amendment?
If I can, thank you. Look, as noted by Mr. Russell earlier, that the advice notes are of little significance other than just simply to air a particular issue or concern. In this regard, the Blackadder Creek system is a valuable area for protection and consideration. And I've spent a considerable number of my years on Perth NRM as part of looking after that area. If we're going to retain any or all of the advice notes, then we should...
Russell, can you just hold on a second? Thank you. Go ahead,
Yes.
Councillor Anderson.
I'm sorry, just to finalise, if we're going to retain any of the advice notes, I think we should retain this one just simply to alert the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, do you wish to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Look, with your leave, I might make a helpful suggestion for the parties here. Councillor Catalano is quite right that the advice note stems from specific advice provided by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions that has principal interest in the protection and management of the watercourses such as Blackadder Creek. If I can make a suggestion to acknowledge their input and concern in relation to managing construction impacts on the Blackadder Creek, in addition to or in conjunction with the proposed deletion of the advice note, could I suggest it might suit the panel to modify condition 23 in the following manner, to say a construction management plan shall be submitted for approval to the City of Swan on advice of the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attraction prior to commencement of work, so that the construction management plan is referred to that agency so that that agency's concerns expressed in the advice note can be encompassed and form part of the review of that plan. And I think that suits both parties in relation to an approach to the advice note and also keeping the input of DBCA through the modification to condition 23.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. So noting that sediment and erosion control is already mentioned under clause 23 as one of the key issues to be dealt with by the construction management plan. As mover of that amendment, I'm happy to include that wording, deletion of advice note E and inclusion of that wording into condition, where is it now? 20, yeah, into condition 23. As the seconder to that amendment, are you happy to second that
Yes, I'm
change? Thank you. Councillor Catalano, would that address your concerns or not?
Oh, okay, is it possible for you to just read out that sentence then, as you're going to change it so that I can?
Okay, so condition 23 currently reads: a construction management plan shall be submitted for approval to the City of Swan prior to commencement of works.
Yeah.
The construction management plan shall address dust, noise, waste management, storage of materials, traffic management, site safety, security, and sediment and erosion and control. So it already deals with sediment and erosion control, but what the city's officers are recommending is a construction management plan which has been discussed with DBCA or developed in conjunction with DBCA shall be submitted for approval. So it just weaves in that extra layer of protection.
Yes, but are you going to, is this condition going to read, can you just tell me what the condition's going to read like? Sorry, I just want to know where you're going to insert this bit about the department.
So a construction management plan shall be submitted for approval following engagement with DBCA to the City of Swan prior to commencement of works.
Okay, all right. And is the proponent to engage with DBCA, or is the city to engage with DBCA?
The city
Not clear from that.
The city will engage with DBCA and the proponent, I guess. The construction management plan, once it is lodged and before it's approved by the city, there needs to have been engagement with DBCA. And noting that 23 already says that the construction management plan needs to deal with sediment and erosion.
I understand what it says, but what it says and what happens in the real world are two separate things. That's why we need to have DBCA involved.
That's fine. So are you happy with that amendment then?
Yes, and so is it going to read, the construction management plan is to be compiled in conjunction or with
Mr. Russell, you can hop in if you like. The construction management plan shall be submitted for approval to the City of Swan following engagement with DBCA and prior to commencement of works. Is that what you're suggesting?
In effect, Madam Chairman, what I put there is to say what I actually worded, but it's the same thing as you've stated. But my words were: a construction management plan shall be submitted for approval to the City of Swan, comma, upon advice, subject to advice of the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions prior to commencement of works. Which is the same as what you've worded, just differently.
I would agree to that if that is put into the minutes.
Thank you. So that is the amendment that I will now move and seconded by Mr. D'Alessandro. All those in favour of that amendment to delete advice note E and amend condition 23. Sorry. Yes.
My general comments are I don't have a concern with the amendment. I suppose my comment, and it's probably where the final language we've got for the conditions are referring to is that with or without these words, the city, as the clearing agent for that condition, can liaise with other agencies, and the applicant would equally be expected to liaise with associated agents in relation to completing such documentation. I note that the aspect of DBCA is specifically in relation to sediment and erosion control. There are other matters in that condition which deal with elements that are essentially the city's responsibility. So I understand the intent of the change. I'm not as, and whilst I don't object to it, I'm not as convinced that in its own right it doesn't already do what is being requested of it, I think is inherent in it from both applicant and in particular city is as the clearing agent. I suppose that's Julie, my general comment. So I don't have an objection to the changes. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you. I am going to, I think we've discussed this now. I'm going to, no, Mr. Busher, sorry, we're in debate now. I'm not going to receive your comments. I'm going to ask whether or not the panel supports the amendment proposed and worded as by Mr. Russell. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. With that, I'm going to move back to the primary motion. So we are now deferring back to the primary motion, including the amendments that have just been approved by the panel. In talking to the primary motion, I am happy to support. The boarding house will be built on the site of a previous boarding house. It aligns well with the objectives and provisions of the local planning framework, and it was supported by the city's design review panel. I note that 2 objections were received, but these objections have been addressed by the city in the responsible authority report, and I'm comfortable that the conditions that were recommended and have now been amended are appropriate to address the issues raised. With that, I will defer back now to the mover to close debate on the item.
I have no further comments to make.
Thank you. On that basis, then, could I seek by a show of the hands all those in favour of the recommendation for approval with the conditions as amended? All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Moving then to item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none on the agenda for today. Item 5, Section 31 SAT reconsiderations. There are nil. Part D, other business. SAT applications and Supreme Court appeals. All SAT applications for the DAP are listed on the DAP website, none of which relate to the City of Swan. With that, I will bring the meeting to a close at 2:02 p.m. and I thank you for your attendance.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.